Hello, everyone. Julie here with ARMS, and I'm very pleased to welcome a guest today named Gwendolyn Jones. She is the founder of Arise International Incorporated, and it looks to me like their entire focus on their website and with their groups is to really support survivors, of human trafficking, of domestic violence, and especially in particular, they tend to have a component of sexual violence that they address in their program. So I wanted to interview her because we have a lot of survivors here at ARMS, as you know, and many of them have been affected by, sexual abuse and trauma and assault. And occasionally we also get people in who have been in trafficking. So it's good to meet you, Gwendolyn. Thank you for coming.
And thank you for having
me. Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we start with telling us how it all began for you? How did this organization start?
Well, Arise was established due to my own personal healing journey from the effects of sexual trauma in childhood. I was sexually abused by my stepdad from the ages of 12 through 17. And this was back in the 70s when a lot of talk wasn't about sexual abuse. A lot of it was just swept under the rug and you were supposed to just move forward like everything was okay. And it wasn't out in the open like it is today socially. And so I didn't get the proper help or the resources that I needed. And I ran away at the age of 17 to escape the abuse. And literally thought that now that I am away from the environment, I'm not being abused anymore, and now I'm okay. So when I moved forward and graduated a year later from high school, in 1977, I met my husband in 1980 and got married. I didn't think it was an issue. Said, this is who I am today. That's in the past. And I can move forward with my life. But both you and I know that looking back at that, hindsight is 2020, that wasn't true. I didn't understand or did not know the impact of the sexual abuse that I experienced for 5 years had impacted me, had impacted my soul, had impacted the way I looked at life, how I looked at myself, how I was so mistrusting of people. But when I married in 1980, I didn't have the resources, and I just continued to move forward in life as a very angry young woman. My husband and I had 2 children, and thankfully, we are still married today because that could have been totally opposite. And so it wasn't until 1994 when my abuser died, my mother chose to stay with her husband all of that time. And so when he passed away in 94, my life, I'm married, 2 children, living in my own space, my life began to emotionally spiral out of control. And I did not understand what was going on with me with that. And that was the catalyst that propelled me into counseling. In 94. And that's where I was diagnosed with PTSD and clinical depression as a result of the traumatic experience in childhood.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I hear you. I had some of that as well. And it was also the 70s and 80s, and I look back and I'm like, why? It only feels like we've been able to have, speak out and be accepted in our experiences, in the last even 10 years, maybe 20, right? But I've even, connected with some of my old church friends who were girls at the time I was, only to come to find out what their dads were doing behind closed doors, and how awful that was. And, they were elders in the church and they were leaders, and
yes,
it's awful. So it's left this huge, I hate to call us victims. I think a lot of us have moved on from that victim mentality, but it left a huge piece of us at your very soul, as you mentioned, right?
Right?
that needed to heal.
Absolutely. And I didn't know I needed to heal. I had no one in my world telling me I needed to heal. I,
Yeah.
I like to use the term I was victimized instead of looking at myself as a victim. Yes, in the legal term, yes, I was,
Mhm.
but I don't want to carry around that mentality of a victim.
Right.
So yes, I was victimized, and when I went to the one who I believed who would I could trust and who would protect me, my mother didn't. She didn't believe me, and therefore left me in an environment where I was being harmed
Mhm.
for that period of 5 years. And that is so common. I hate that that's the norm,
Mhm.
but I hear a lot of stories like that.
I do too. Yeah. Did your mom ever come around? Were you guys ever able to talk about
She did
that?
not. She did not.
Mhm.
My mother is still living today.
Mhm.
God definitely took me through a journey of forgiveness,
Mhm.
and that had been a long process. Although our relationship is not reconciled,
Okay.
but I'm at peace with it.
Yeah. Mhm. You've done what you can, and you can't change other people,
Right.
right?
I
Mhm.
cannot. And so that's her decision to be where she is. And so
Yeah,
I just have to move forward and be obedient and do what he's called me to do.
absolutely. Yeah. I think there was a point in time where I felt that in order for me to heal, that I needed the validation of these people
Yes,
that were so very, very important.
yes,
And we rarely get it. And it took me a couple years, but I realized,
mhm,
I'm working on my healing and I'm okay. And I didn't actually need, that validation from
right.
the members.
Yeah. I think we're taught that, but like you said, in reality, we don't need that.
Right.
And so once we learn that we can let that go,
Mhm.
we're not tied to that situation. It's
Right.
more we can move forward and live our lives and be at peace and um, do what the Lord has called us to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us about Arise International. Tell us what services you provide.
Well, the services that we do provide, we exist strictly for support groups. That is our bread and butter. If it wasn't for these support groups, we would not exist. When we initially started in 2007, when I formed it, we were an education and awareness organization.
Mm.
Because what I found on my journey to healing, and as I walked that journey, I started opening up and sharing with other friends around me about my experience and what had happened to me. Because now I'm in counseling and I'm working through these issues. And then what I found out was me too.
Mm.
And these were friends that I consider close friends. And we talked about a lot of things, a lot of personal things, but we never talked about that.
Right.
So,
Everything.
yes, everything but that. So, Arise was established to raise awareness of education in the community, the impact of sexual violence on individuals' lives and how it impacts the family. And that's what I was doing from 2007 until 2008 until my lead facilitator. I went into the Shelter from the Storm curriculum in January of 1995. The counselor that I initially met with in 94, he encouraged me to find a support group in my area.
Mhm.
And I tried to find one. I tried to find one in my community. I tried to find one where my local church was,
Mhm.
and I could not find one. And so I was really frustrated with that. And so I said that I just have to resign to stay in counseling and read all the resources I can get my hand on. I was like a sponge, just soaking up so much information.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, there was an intern at my local church who was working toward her LPC.
Mhm.
And she was seeing clients who were coming in for relationship issues, anger issue, money issues, low self-esteem. But when she started working with them, guess what the root was?
Mhm.
The root was child sexual abuse that
Wow.
had not been addressed. And so she wanted to find something for them to refer them to a group where they can start working through that issue and then she can work with them later on the other issues.
Mhm.
Well, she ran into the same thing I ran into. This was in 94.
Mhm.
And so she took it upon herself to start the first Shelter from the Storm support group there at the church.
Okay.
And when she started it, and I enrolled in January 1995, I came into that group.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that journey to heal, and I stayed a part of the support group. And it was in 2008 when she approached me and told me she's passing the baton to me. This is yours, which I didn't think it was mine.
Surprise.
I had no desire to facilitate a support group because I was still in corporate America, working full time. I was traveling with my company, and we would go out on assignments where I'm gone anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And I knew I couldn't commit to being at home for 12 weeks to run the group.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, lo and behold, long story short, God confirmed, yeah, this is where I want you.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that group in September 2008, and then Arise became a recovery organization.
A little bit of a switch there.
Yes, a little bit of a switch. So we just combine the services. Of course, the support groups are preeminent, but then we also provide resources for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
We do require that they are working with a licensed professional, someone who is trauma informed,
Mm-hmm.
because we are not a counseling agency. We don't perform therapy. We are strictly a support group.
Mm-hmm.
We are here to provide support and encouragement for the clients.
Mm-hmm.
But as we make the journey and address the emotional wound, that licensed professional is so important. Mm-hmm. That they are there present because so many other issues can come up out of that wound.
Right.
They are the one who are licensed and trained to help them with those issues, because we know survivors deal with shame issues. Shame is a powerful emotion. Mm-hmm. Suicidal thoughts, addictions, and dissociation. Mm-hmm. That's not where our training lies. We can provide the support and the encouragement and give them the space to share and talk about their thoughts and feelings as they are able to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So important. What is it about Shelter from the Storm? I've not taken it. I've heard very good things about it.
Yes.
But I'm assuming it must tackle different, our curriculum is more based on domestic abuse, although sexual abuse is one of the, mm-hmm. we teach 8 types of abuse, and sexual is in there. And so it does come out that some of our ladies have had childhood abuse. So what is different in that? I know you don't know our program, and we don't know Shelter from the Storm. We just heard really good things. So what is different of that sexual abuse survivors need more focus on within a curriculum that is helpful to them?
Well, I think, with the Shelter from the Storm curriculum, and I think it is one of the most, not the only, but one of the most effective curriculums to deal with the root issue of sexual trauma. Survivors, first and foremost, need to have a complete definition of what sexual abuse is. Oftentimes, people think it's just limited to intercourse. It's just physical. If there wasn't any sexual penetration, then it wasn't sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. But there are other behaviors that are just as destructive as physical. And so we need to define what sexual abuse is. And I think Shelter from the Storm does a very effective job of that. Mm-hmm. It defines the whole spectrum of human sexuality, be it verbal, visual, or physical. Mm-hmm. And so Shelter also, to me, goes to the root issues instead of just dealing with symptoms. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of times you will see survivors that they're angry, and rightfully so, but they don't know where the anger is coming from. They have low self-esteem. They're in denial. They can have a host of other problems in their life, but they never make the connection to the sexual abuse from the past. Mm-hmm. And Shelter has an excellent way of, okay, let's go down to the root system and deal with the root. Mm-hmm. And when we deal with the root and see where they're coming from, then we can work through the root issues, and you're going to see the symptoms dissipate over time.
Mhm. Right. And for you, from what you see, it sounds like you found that childhood sexual abuse is almost always the root issue. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Right?
I believe that. And our target audience is uh, adult women ages 18 and up.
Mhm.
And we focus on the childhood abuse perspective. I have had survivors reach out and say, well, I was assaulted as an adult. Can I participate in the shelter curriculum?
Mhm.
And oftentimes I say yes, because what I found is that there were experiences in childhood that they did not identify as abusive,
Mhm.
that
Yes.
there was child sexual abuse present.
Right. Yeah. I like the extended definition you talk about because we teach the same. When I go out and speak and I talk about the types of abuse and I tell them that pornography is sexual abuse, they're all like, what I mostly get afterwards is thank you. Thank you for bringing this up, that this is sexual abuse, and we teach the coercion and manipulation for sex and
Right,
making somebody dress sexy like you want or any sexual innuendos, all that is sexual abuse. It's not just rape. Unwanted
right,
touch, as well. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and that extends the definition,
Absolutely.
quite
Yeah, absolutely. The verbal, a perpetrator can sexually, verbally sexually abuse someone and never touch
mm,
the child.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we also find that I don't know if you find this as well, but we find that with women in their current situation or even past situation, that often the extreme jealousy category comes along with the sexual abuse. So I'm not sure why that correlation is there, but that's what we've seen, in
Mhm,
do that,
mhm,
that as
mhm.
well.
Well, jealousy is one of those symptoms
Mhm.
that is on the survivor's life.
Mhm.
We have seen that, but it's working through. Let's go down to the root and let's deal with other
Right,
root issues and watch that symptom dissipate
right,
over time.
right.
Yeah,
Is
and
there?
I love the shelter curriculum because of the community
Mhm.
that it creates. Because we need a safe community to come and address these issues.
Yeah,
When you're dealing with incest, the family is not likely to want to address the issue.
right,
Oftentimes, the abuser is still present
yeah,
in the family
right,
and it hadn't been addressed. So, where is the survivor going to go to address that emotional wound?
right, exactly. And when
Mhm.
you say it's a support group, is there some curriculum or is it mostly time to process and talk about like a guided processing?
Where there's both, because they have to purchase the workbook, the Shelter from the Storm workbook. And in their private time away from the group, shelter is divided into 12 units, and we take a unit per week. So in their private time, say for instance, if we're on unit one, then they are reading through unit one. And we meet once a week for 2 hours. Our group now is running on Tuesdays. Matter of fact, we have a group coming up on tomorrow. So when they come back, we just started this fall semester. So we're on unit two. So they've been reading unit two,
Okay.
and the curriculum is going to ask them questions. There's exercises for them to answer and fill out. And so when they meet tomorrow, then we as facilitators, we'll pull out selected exercises and have a group discussion about that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about those that have come from a trafficking situation. I feel like, their trauma, well, our traumas, you don't want to grade people's trauma, obviously, but if somebody's been trafficked, and used over and over again, versus perhaps a one-time experience of a sexual assault, is there different care that they need, more care that they need, or does does it work with this curriculum to take them through it? And do they see benefits from that?
Well, human trafficking, I think that there's more care that they need, but what we can provide here at Arise, we can provide for them the recovery piece.
Hmm.
Because what I have found out with working with trafficking survivors, a lot of the sexual abuse did start for them in childhood by family members or by someone they know. And we know, looking at the stats, it's someone that the child knows, loves, and trusts.
Mhm.
It's not that stranger.
Right.
So we can provide the recovery piece, but there are so many other elements that human traffickers need.
Mhm.
And that's where I like to rely on the other resources in the community.
Okay. And so you'd recommend for them not just shelter in the storm, but I'm sure one-on-one counseling as well. And then are there other things you'd also, does it depend on depending on the community itself?
Right. Well, that's we require all our clients to be working with a professional.
Mm.
That's just part of their support system. And
Yeah.
that's one of the other things that I really love about the shelter curriculum. As we begin this journey, it requires you to build a support system.
Mhm.
You've heard that saying that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a support system for a survivor to recover. Oftentimes, survivors have tried to do it in isolation on their own, and it doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work.
No.
And we spend years. I know it was 24 years before I came in recovery. I
Mhm.
was 36 years old.
Yeah. Mm.
And that wound was so infected by the time I hit that counselor's office. So we are afraid of relationships because we were hurt in relationships.
Right.
But coming into a safe support group and learning that there are safe people in the world
Mhm.
and that we were made for relationships,
Mhm.
not to be alone.
Right.
We were made for connection.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's a learning process when they come in, they are so fearful of being in the group, trying to understand how would this help me? Can this help me? Can I trust this place? Can I trust these people? And we understand all of that. However, we always tell them, whatever you feel, it's okay to feel.
Mhm.
Your feelings are valid, but just keep moving.
Very important. Very important. Yeah.
Keep doing the work, keep showing up, and they will be amazed at how they're learning that, yes, I can trust this process.
Right.
Mhm.
Do you ever find yourself triggered a little bit due to your experiences as you're teaching these things, or are you ever advanced enough in your healing where that doesn't happen for you?
Well, I think that as a trauma survivor, there are always going to be things that may trigger some memories, some deep memories in you.
Mhm.
And so I always, even that support system that I require the clients to have, I have it around me too.
Mhm.
I have a professional counselor that I need to go and talk to. I have other support people in my circle that I need to go and talk to because I run across a lot of similar stories that were similar to mine.
Mhm.
And so when I'm triggered by something, yeah, that was a part of my history, then I am able to use the tools that I've learned
Mhm.
to start processing that and working through that instead of using dysfunctional ways and not addressing it.
Right.
Because I truly believe that healing is a continuous journey.
Mhm.
As we move forward, we never know what may trigger a deeper layer in us
Right.
that we hadn't even thought about.
Right. I find that when I do start getting triggered a little bit, it really just means I need to increase my self-care. I need to go back to
Absolutely.
my support system and,
Yes.
have an online group where it's strictly processing. So you go
Right.
and just spew, we go around to
Right.
everybody. It's basically how's your week? And you can say whatever's on your mind. So I'm like, whether it's my
Right.
adult child showing these tendencies that, their father did, or whether it's this or that group gets it. And it's like, and afterwards I'm like, You know, okay, I
Right,
can go back to my work now. 'Cause
right.
I needed
You
it.
don't have to do all the explaining.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to have um, a support system for yourself and to do self-care.
Yeah, very important. I would
Hmm.
concur with that for sure. Yeah. So what percentage, I mean, if you, I don't know if you have an idea of the percentage, would you say there's a high amount of those who have been trafficked that come through your program, or is it more in the lower percentile? We find that in domestic violence that we still get a good probably 15 to 20% that, you know, have been trafficked in some way, shape, or form. And it may not have been international or being kidnapped and going to the brothels and all that. It may be,
Right.
you know, somebody just selling them to their friends, or it may be somebody who's in a strip club environment but is being coerced to be there and really doesn't want to be there and has that trauma. So if you
Right.
had to guess, what percent would you say of people that have been trafficked in your case go to shelter from the storm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From my experience, I guess I would say it would be on the lower end for us,
Mhm.
probably 10%. The higher percentage of clients that we see are the ones childhood sexual trauma where they were violated in their homes
Mhm.
or violated from someone at the church
Mhm.
that they knew or someone in the neighborhood
Right. Okay.
and not necessarily trafficked.
Not so trafficked. Okay. And I note that there's some differences in how we run our programs. For instance, ours is open-ended, so they can start there's groups going on even on Zoom every single day, so they can start anytime.
Yes.
Because we find that with domestic abuse, you know, when they call us is when they're in crisis. And if they call me and they're in crisis and I can get them into a group that day or the next day, we have a much higher success rate of, you know, helping them start their healing versus a group that starts in 2 weeks or whatever. And so I noted that yours are set up a little bit differently. And there's some advantages to that, right? Because
Right.
you get the same women in the same group, I guess, and they kind of move along the units together. Is that how that works? And they also,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
it helps to establish trust. The Shelter from the Storm curriculum is a closed format.
okay.
So it either closes, the curriculum requires that we only take 8 ladies per group.
Okay.
If we have more ladies who are trying to get in the group, then we will open up another group.
Okay.
But we have to have at least 5 to open up another group.
Okay.
And we have ran groups on based on the demand from the community. We have ran groups on Monday night, Tuesday nights, and Thursday nights.
Okay. Okay.
So for now, shelter is just running on Tuesday. And so this semester we have 8 clients, so it is closed already. It won't open up again until spring 2024.
Okay. Okay. So you have
But
it organized out ahead of time. So yeah.
mhm,
Okay. So I get that.
but we have created another program called our Survivor Mentor Program, which is an open format.
Hmm.
And so, because we were running into ladies who would reach out after shelter, it was either closed, because it closes 2 weeks automatically after it begins, or either it's full. One of those two things gonna happen. And they would reach out to us, and we couldn't open up the group anymore. And so we would put them on our wait list, and we would reach out to them, send them resources. And then when we'll follow back up with them when it was time for the group to start, and we wouldn't hear back from them.
Hmm.
So I was telling the team, I'm like, okay, we have to create something where when they reach out to us, we have to bring them in.
Mhm.
Because working with this population, if you don't get them then,
Right.
just like you said,
Yeah.
then you could lose them.
Right.
And so we created the Survivor Mentor Program. It's been running since 2021, I believe.
Hmm.
And it's an open group. Its shelter is 15 weeks for a semester. The mentor program is 8 weeks, and we use a different curriculum.
Mhm.
It is the mentor program is like a bridge to get the survivors ready to transition into shelter.
Okay.
So, and the mentor program is a little laid back. We don't meet every week. We meet every other week,
Mhm.
and we only meet for an hour.
Mhm.
And there's 2 resources they have to get. We use the curriculum called Hush, by Nicole Braddock Bromley, and you can look her up on the internet. She has a powerful ministry. Um, so we use her textbook and the workbook, and then the participants will be assigned a mentor who will walk alongside of them for that 8 weeks, who will follow up with them on a weekly basis to check on them, see if they have any questions, how's it going? Because just knowing that having that safe community is so crucial. So they would feel connected and not feel alone. And then it's running simultaneously with shelter during the semesters. And so when the semester ends and it opens back up, then we can bring those that were in the mentor program into the shelter curriculum.
Got it. Okay.
For a deeper dive.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you have help available right away. That is important. So
yes.
Glad to hear that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are finances ever a concern? I understand that shelter is a paid program, and is there any like scholarship opportunities or anything for those ladies that really can't?
Absolutely, there is. And the fees that we charge go into helping the nonprofit Arise with our operating expenses. And so we do charge for the shelter curriculum. We do not charge for the mentor program. So for clients who need financial assistance, they can enroll in the scholarship program doing the online registration. And we charge $300 per semester per client. So what that's going to do when they enroll in a scholarship program is going to cut it in half, and they were only required to pay $150. And then the other $150, the organization will go to our donor base and ask, would they sponsor a survivor? And so we've had a lot of success with that. We've had clients, yes, I'll sponsor a partial scholarship, and some of them have partial or full scholarship. It's just based on the donor.
Yeah, and then some survivors give back, when it's time to do so. Pay it forward to somebody else.
There you go. Because those who have graduated from the program and have benefited, they see the effectiveness of it, and they want to support another survivor.
Right. Yeah. That's important. And we even think it's part of the philosophy that God gives us as part of our healing is some kind of giving back, and maybe it's not working in the industry, like you and I do. Right. Maybe it's leading a group, right? Or maybe it's giving some financial assistance.
Right. There are so many ways to give back. And I always tell them, you may not be called to be a facilitator like me. I didn't think I was going to be called to be a facilitator.
Surprise. Yeah, I hear you.
But he may not call you to be a facilitator, but can you provide resources for someone?
Right.
Can you come along and support someone? We have created roles, a peer supporter for someone in shelter, and a peer supporter is someone who has graduated from the shelter, from the STORM curriculum. Now will come alongside and walk with a current participant through the program. Who better than them to know it?
Exactly, right. Have you been able to connect with the local police departments and people that are, could refer people, who have been in a rape situation, an assault situation? Is that something that you would reach out and do, or do you just pretty much rely on other referrals? How's that work?
Well, we have done that in the past through some local municipalities, not the Dallas City Police Department, but some of the suburban areas that know about Arise. And we've had postcards made, and we have given those to the officers. And if they come across a rape survivor, hand them the card.
Okay.
Yeah. Haven't had a lot of, I don't know if they're not passing them out, but if the survivor is not calling, not reaching out, because it's such a taboo topic still, and a lot of shame that's associated with it.
Right.
So how we get our biggest clients is word of mouth. It's like every survivor knows a survivor.
Mhm.
So it's word of mouth. And we built up a referral system with different counselors that we work with over the years.
Mhm.
They refer clients to us when they feel like they are ready for a support group and they have done individual therapy. They
Mhm.
will refer them to us.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, we market on social media, and I do get quite a few from social media.
Yeah, good, good.
Mhm.
And since you and I last talked, I have mentioned it to three people who have called, just to let you know. I know that I'm not the only one answering the phone here, but they were very
Okay.
specific cases of, childhood abuse and have not yet healed from that. And I do coaching, I do coaching as well, and I often find, on weekends, and I often do find that that's
Mhm.
in the background, and
Mhm.
unless we go backwards and work with that, somebody can't move forward, in their healing.
Absolutely. And Julie, that is so key because a lot of people, they'll say, well, don't dig up the past. The past is the past. Leave the past where it is. Well, the experience is in the past
Right,
and you cannot change that.
right, yeah,
But what we can change in the present is the effects of it.
right,
And we have to go back and address the past because there are lies and distortions that we believe about the
right,
past.
right,
We're still blaming ourselves that it was our fault.
right, yeah,
We still are seeing ourselves as not worthy
right,
of being dirty, of being bad.
mhm,
That has to be addressed
yeah,
because you will not be able to move forward in your future
right,
and be who your creator created you to be.
right, right.
So that has to be cleansed out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tell my gals all the time, you've got an abundant life waiting for you if you choose
Absolutely.
that, because you cannot
Absolutely.
live that abundant life
Yeah.
God has planned for
Yeah.
you when you're
Yeah.
either A, still in abuse, right? Or B, not working on healing from your abuse.
Right.
Block your
Right.
life, nothing else. So,
That's right.
yeah,
There is a future brighter than they can even imagine,
right, exactly.
but
Yeah,
they just have to do the work.
right.
You have to take the time. And, I tell clients when they come to us, give the Lord a year and a half.
Hmm, I like that.
Come in and sit down because the curriculum for 3 semesters, it equates to a year and a half.
Hmm. Hmm.
Give him a year and a half
Hmm.
to address this wound.
That's great.
Mhm.
That is great.
And then I'm telling you, I've seen them.
Mhm.
I've seen them go off into directions. I've seen that they wouldn't even think they could have gone or could
Yeah.
have done.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, I don't know what my purpose is. Well, you're not going to know your purpose.
Mm.
And even if your purpose tapped you on the nose, you wouldn't even have the courage to do it.
Right. 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 Until you decide to work on that, your
Right.
healing and
You,
yourself,
you
right?
gotta do some work.
Right.
You gotta do some work. And I have never had I've through this process since I've been facilitating since 2008. I've had over 100 clients who have graduated from the program.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah.
And I will tell you this, and I'll tell the ladies, especially the new ones coming in, I have never had one to come back and tell me, oh, I wish I hadn't walked through shelter,
Hmm.
or I wish I hadn't addressed recovery. I've
Yeah.
never heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, because God is so much better for us out there. You
Yes.
know.
And it's a truth walk.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's what we're learning because there are so many lies and deception that we believe about the experience. And so you got to know what the truth is.
Hmm.
And we don't even know the lies that we're believing on a regular basis and how it's so ingrained in us because we have nothing to compare it to.
Right.
It's
That's
only when we come into recovery that we can, okay, here are the lies. Now we got something to compare it to, and then we can see it.
right.
It's when you see it is that's when you can start making other choices.
Right.
But until you can see it, you're still going to be in
Hmm.
that same vein.
Well, and I think you also have to recognize your value, because as long as you don't recognize your value, you will make those other choices and you
That's
will ignore red
right,
flags. When you get
right.
to a point where you're like, I am worth more than this, and
Yeah,
God sees me as more than this, then that's when you start putting up your boundaries, and saying enough is enough,
yeah,
and I won't put up with this
yeah,
anymore. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The value and worth, that's a fallout of the sexual trauma. I must not be valuable or
Right.
worth anything
Right.
because if my daddy did this to me, I surely can't amount to much of anything.
Right. Yeah.
And boundaries, not even knowing what boundaries were. I didn't know what a boundary was until I came into recovery at age 36.
Right. Yeah. Do you see a correlation between women who have been sexually abused by a father figure or a father have a hard time accepting God's love for
Oh
them
yes.
as a
Oh
father?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is so devastating. God tells us that He created us spirit, soul, and body.
Hmm.
We're just not bodies,
Yeah.
but there's two other parts of us that we cannot see.
Mm.
Our soul, which is our mind, our will and emotions, our personality, and the
Mm.
spirit part of us that communicates with Him. All three areas are impacted. All three.
Yeah.
And all three of them have to be attended to.
Hmm.
And the spiritual area is a huge area
Yeah.
because now I don't trust God.
Hmm.
Where were you? I don't even like the word father.
Right.
How I'm going to call you father when my father violated me in such a horrific way?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. And so it's about having to learn to rebuild a relationship with the true father.
Yeah. Yeah. I once had a gal tell me when I asked, she was attending our groups, and anybody can attend our groups, even if they don't have faith, or any faith can attend our groups, but she did not yet have a personal relationship with the Lord. And when I asked her about it, she literally said, "Are you kidding me?" She said, "Give control to a God and she literally said, that's a big white man," she said, is
Yes.
what she said.
Yes.
Give him control of my life when I've been through so much.
Yes.
And it just
Yes.
broke my heart because I'm like, if you realize, with that big man, big God, how much he treasures you and adores you and loves you,
Yes.
it would be a totally different. But
Oh,
she has to get to that point where she gets there herself. But I get it. I mean, she grew up with a ton of abuse, and every man in
absolutely.
her life, eh,
Yeah.
she has violated her in some way, shape, or form. So I
Mhm.
understand it. Yeah.
That's a huge piece, and it does a lot of damage. And
Mhm.
survivors, we walk around in life with distorted views of life and spiritual matters.
Right.
So that authority position, because it is the earthly father figures who are supposed to teach us what it means to have a relationship with the Heavenly Father.
Right.
And when that's been violated at the earthly level, you
Mhm.
do damage
Yeah.
at the spiritual level.
You do damage. Yeah.
That has to be repaired. And oftentimes, and that was for my experience as well. Even though that was my stepdad, and he was in a position
Mhm.
of authority over my life, but my biological father, he abandoned me and my two brothers when we were young. So I didn't have that relationship with a father like
Mhm.
I should have had a father. So when I came into recovery, when I accepted Christ in 1982,
Mhm.
and so, but I still didn't have that relationship intimate like I should have had, and it was because of the sexual abuse issue that hadn't been worked on. And
Mhm.
so shelter does a really great job of recognizing the damage at the spiritual level and suggest oftentimes that we have to see him as shepherd before we can see him as father.
Mhm. That's excellent. I love that. I love
So
that
it's a
analogy.
progression.
Yeah.
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 And once they learn how kind the shepherd is
Right.
and how loving he is
Mhm.
and how he wants to provide, then you can see that progression will transition over into, okay, this is the true father. What I experienced from earthly fathers was not real.
Mhm. The Lord is my shepherd. Yeah. Amen. I
Yeah.
love that very much.
Hmm.
One
Hmm.
last question for you. Do you find that the gals who go through the program successfully are able to kind of break the cycle in their family of abuse and sexual assault? You see
I do. I absolutely do. I mean, when you said that, I just had a flash of a lot of images in my head.
Yeah. A lot of them have, huh?
Right. We call them cycle breakers because they are breaking, they broke it in their generation and they're breaking it for their children
Right.
because they are modeling to their children healthy behaviors
Right.
and healthy boundaries now, and they're able to talk about their experience. And I've seen them get married and go into healthy relationships because we know that many survivors are attracted to dysfunctional relationships.
Right. Right.
So they don't know how to trust.
No.
They don't know what it means to be in a relationship, and we gravitate towards normal,
Right.
even though it's abusive.
Right.
But that's normal to us. That's what we saw. That's what we experienced, and
Right.
we go back to the same thing
Yeah.
because we haven't sat down and renewed our mind of what healthy relationships look like.
Mhm. Yeah. But guess what? We can get there, and you and I are both proof of that. And it's very
We are proof
exciting
of that.
as we
And
work.
I thank God for that. You know, I have two children.
Mhm.
My son is the oldest, and my daughter is the youngest, and she's married
Mhm.
to a loving, caring man, and she won't know that type of abuse.
Right. Yeah. Amen. Right.
Hmm.
Amen.
Hmm.
Pass it on in a good way.
Absolutely. And my son is not abusive,
Yeah.
so you know they know my story.
Mhm.
I'm very open with them about that.
Mhm.
And so it's about passing it on to the next generation. I don't want that passing to my grandchildren.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I tell ladies that whether your kids know it or not, they will be affected in a positive way by your healing, and when they come to group and they're worried about, and maybe they're younger, maybe they're adults, it doesn't matter. When you are healing, you start talking different, you start putting off a different vibe, you start accepting and not accepting different behaviors, and that will have an impact on them, even if they choose not to get that help themselves.
Right.
That is a good starting point for any family.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just to know that healing is possible.
Yeah.
Survivors have to know that healing is possible and it's not going to fall on you by osmosis. It's not going to happen overnight.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be nice. But it doesn't happen that way. Just like if we broke our leg, your
Right.
leg is not going to heal overnight.
Right.
It
Right.
takes time and it's a process. And so healing the emotional and spiritual wounds related to the trauma, it's going to take time.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Well, Gwendolyn, thank you for your time. We will make sure and add to the notes your contact information and the website so people know how to contact you for more
Okay.
information. Thank you for your work that you're doing in this space. It's so very, very important. And
Thank you.
we appreciate getting to know you a little bit. And hopefully we can talk at another time as well.
All right. Looking forward.
All right.
Thank you, Julie. All righty.